Today, we'll be taking a luxury train all across Western Canada, from Vancouver all the way through the interior of British Columbia, and then into Alberta and finishing off at the beautiful Banff. We'll be on this beautiful luxury train throughout the 2 days, and I'll show you what the entire journey is like, from the cabin to the seats to the dining experience, the food and drinks, and of course the spectacular views along the entirety of the Rocky Mountaineer. Without further ado, let's head to the rail yard in Vancouver and start the journey. You're joining me now here in a beautiful sunrise in Vancouver, where today we're headed off on a new kind of adventure. The Rocky Mountaineer experience starts bright and early here in Vancouver at around 7 a.m. in the morning. As a passenger, you check in at the Rocky Mountaineer station, and that's also where they collect your luggage from you so you don't have to bring it on the train. By the way, quick thank you to Monos for sponsoring this video, but more on them later. We helped ourselves to some complimentary coffee as we waited to board the train. And as I looked at the beautiful Rocky Mountaineer train car and the early morning sunrise, I was starting to feel quite excited. Now, I've taken a few train rides before all around the world, but this is my first time on anything resembling a luxury train ride, so I'm really curious what the experience is actually going to be like. I can't believe we're spending 2 days on this beauty. Let's board the train. I was welcomed down the red carpet, into the train car, and up the stairs into the Rocky Mountaineer Gold Leaf train cabin. Now, the Gold Leaf cabin is truly a work of art. You've got these incredible overhead windows that lets you get up close and personal with all of the scenic views along the way. And towards the back of the cabin, you've got a galley area where there's a drink spread that's already looking very tempting. On the Rocky Mountaineer, everybody gets randomly assigned their seats. The seats themselves are pretty comfortable, with a small seat back pocket in front of you, a comprehensive set of controls on the side, and a tray table that pops straight ahead of you out of the armrest and folds upwards before rotating downwards into place. Welcome to Rocky Mountaineer, home for the next 2 days, en route to Banff.
So upstairs at the far back, you'll see right now is Alyssa. Say hi to Alyssa. Hi, Alyssa.
As the last few busloads of fellow passengers poured in and we began our journey, it was time to start with the first meal of our 2 days, breakfast down in the dining car. Now you'll notice that the dining cabin is much smaller than the cabin upstairs, and so all of the passengers are split into 2 groups to dine at separate times. There are a few tables that are suitable for 2 passengers, but most of the tables are for 4, and so you're very much encouraged to chat and mingle with your fellow guests over the course of a meal. For breakfast, we'd be treated to a very impressive wide-ranging menu, and today I decided to order the bacon breakfast skillet, while Jesse got the eggs benedict. Breakfast would begin with coffee and fresh croissants, along with a fruit cup on the side. Pretty soon, the main courses were served, and they definitely looked very appetizing. Jessie had lots of good things to say about her eggs benedict, and I definitely enjoyed the rich flavors of my bacon skillet, and we had a great time chatting with a lovely couple from Australia over the course of this meal. Now, at this point in the journey, we were just starting to pick up velocity as we exited the city of Vancouver and headed out into suburbia. We finished up our breakfast, and then it was time to head back upstairs to start taking in the views. I decided to put my seat into a more relaxing position by reclining a little bit and extending the leg rest. And what's more, the seat is also fitted with internal coils that can warm up your whole environment, making for a very comfortable experience within the air-conditioned train cabin. The drink and snack service would soon begin, and I helped myself to a cup of hot chocolate as well as some mixed nuts to snack on as I took in the views. And after relaxing for a while, it was time to go check out one of the most interesting features here on the Rocky Mountaineer train. Out here on the vestibule, it's extremely windy, but I have to say it's so much fun to actually watch all the nature passing by. we'd end up spending quite a bit of time out here in the vestibule, getting a direct view of the scenery, feeling the wind against our faces, and experiencing the rush of excitement of riding the rails here in this beautiful part of the world. After another drink back at our seat, it was time for lunch. Now the lunch menu varies between day 1 and day 2. And on this lunch sitting, we'd begin with a coastal tasting platter as our starter before our choice of a main course. The tasting platter was delicious, with one of my favorites, candied salmon served alongside hummus and pita bread. It was just the right mix of sweet, savory, and spicy to get the meal off to a great start. And after that, I switched from white to red wine as I indulged in my main course of the Alberta strip loin steak. Now I gotta say, before even digging in, the steak looked absolutely incredible. Meanwhile, Jesse ordered the healthy option of the Rocky Mountaineer Power Bowl with tofu on the side. And now it's time for the main event, a steak on the train. Let's dig in and find out how it tastes. It was a perfect medium rare cut of beef, and I thought it was delectable, especially since it was prepared in the kitchen on the train. And of course, my Shiraz red wine was a nice compliment. And we'd finish off the meal with some delicious cheesecake with strawberry compotes on top. As our journey continued into the interior of BC, the landscape started to change fairly dramatically. Now this is a particularly dry part of Canada, and you can see from the landscape how it's a lot more barren compared to the coastal areas. After a big lunch, let's come here and check out the bathrooms. I have to say it's quite a nice set of bathrooms here on the Rocky Mountaineer train, especially compared to some of the dingier trains I've been on in the past. There's really nice mirror and sink vanity setup over here. There's the garbage can, toilets over here with flush either a button or a wave function. And right here, there's a bench that you can fold down and have a seat if you needed to. Now the thing with taking the train is you never know exactly what the schedule is gonna be. On many occasions here in the Rocky Mountaineer, we had to stop along the rails to let other trains pass by, or because we were simply stuck at a red signal for whatever reason. What do you think of the train so far?
Absolutely gorgeous.
We're just kind of stuck here for a little bit, but we're gonna get going soon. But invariably, we would get going again soon, hugging the river as we made our way northeast along the tracks. There was a snack service in the afternoon where I helped myself to some freshly baked cookies, but other than that, I simply napped for a while, and pretty soon we found ourselves wrapping up the journey for the day. Alright, it's been a pretty slow afternoon, but we're here on the outskirts of Kamloops now. We're about to make it to the first city that's going to be our destination for this evening. We pulled into the train yard on the north side of Kamloops, and a bus was waiting to bring us to our hotel, for which our room keys were already passed out to us directly on the train. Alright, we're all checked in here at the Delta Hotel Kamloops, and if you're wondering how the luggage works on Rocky Mountaineer, well, it actually doesn't come on the train with you. Instead, it goes on the highway on a bus, and it happens to arrive at your hotel before I even got here. And now I think it's the right time to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, and that's Monos Luggage. The Rocky Mountaineer is a timeless Canadian travel experience, and what better luggage to bring along the journey than Monos, a Canadian travel and lifestyle brand offering premium goods for the mindful traveler. Monos focuses on making products at the center of design, quality, and accessibility, and they sent me over one of their hybrid carry-on suitcases to try out along this trip. The Hybrid Carry-On Plus comes in 3 different colors, champagne, obsidian, and silver. It's outfitted with a zipperless aluminum frame, so there's only 2 locks that you use to secure the bag. There's aluminum corner guards, and a very robust polycarbonate shell. With this piece of luggage, I love how you can just easily pop open the 2 locks and access your items. There's no need to deal with zippers all around the edges. You can pick up your own Monos suitcase with a 10% discount via the link in the description below, and thank you to Monos for sponsoring this video. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Cheers. We had a bright and early start the next day at 6:15 a.m. to head back to the train. Back on the train for day 2, headed to Banff. Today's views should be really nice. Really looking forward to this part of the train ride. Our experience on day 2 began with pastries and coffee at our seat. Now, because we were part of the first set of passengers to have breakfast on day 1, we'd be waiting our turn for the second sitting here on day 2. After another brief nap, we headed back down to the dining car. Time for day 2 breakfast, and I've ordered 2 things off the menu today to try as much as possible. I got the spinach and cheese souffle, and after that I'm also going to try the smoked salmon and chive scramble. Breakfast today would begin with a different fruit cup, and although Jesse ordered the yogurt and berry scramble, I instead opted to load up on 2 different breakfast plates, both of which were very appetizing. Now, at this point in the journey, the dry landscape of the BC interior was transforming into a more lush set of surroundings, and we sat down to take in the views along with a drink in hand. I opted for a few glasses of Caesars, the classic Canadian cocktail. The views were starting to get seriously impressive as we headed east towards the Alberta border, and I spent a fair bit of time out here on the vestibule, taking in the scenery and waving at fellow travelers on the ground. Now, one thing I do want to point out about the Rocky Mountaineer is that there's no Wi-Fi on board, and the train often travels throughout large parts of the country with minimal cell service. Overall, you're very much encouraged to disconnect whenever possible, absorb the scenery all around you, and engage with your fellow travelers. We're now getting to that point in the journey where we've spent a day and a half on the train. There's not much to do besides sitting down and standing up, so getting a little bit bored, but it's our second lunch, and then we're going to start pulling into Banff and Lake Louise, and it's going to be really beautiful. Our second lunch on the Rocky Mountaineer would start with a plateau tasting platter, which came with a delightful blue cheese spread and some sausages to go along with your bread. The views were starting to become truly breathtaking as we started climbing into the mountains and traveling into elevation. I have to say, however, I wasn't the biggest fan of the short rib main course that I had for my second lunch, although Jessie very much enjoyed her salmon and pumpkin risotto. But all's well that ends well, because the apple galette dessert at the end was beautifully sweet, and as we climbed into the highest point of the journey, it very much wrapped up the dining experience here on this 2-day train ride on the highest of notes. Now, as we traveled ever closer to the Alberta border, we started to see the first few snow-capped peaks entering into our line of sight, and I'll let the views here speak for themselves. And before our arrival into Lake Louise, there was still time for one more very interesting part of the journey, the spiral tunnels, a set of winding tunnels that cuts directly through the mountains as a means to traverse them.
So right now we're in the spiral tunnels. A series of tunnels that goes to the spiral, goes on for really long, and I think we're about to head right out of the tunnels, and then we'll be in Alberta.
Now, as we wrap up the journey, let me share with you some details around the cost of the Rocky Mountaineer. A 2-day train ride between Vancouver and Banff with a hotel included in Kamloops will start at $2,000 Canadian per person for the base level Silver Leaf cabin. Now, if you want to book the Gold Leaf cabin like I experienced, with a separate dining room, premium food and drinks, and a better hotel in Kamloops, then that's going to start at $2,500 for the one-way journey. Although in my case, for full transparency, I booked a travel agent rates for this trip. There's also ongoing promotions that you can take advantage of, like saving $1,000 per couple for new bookings made for the 2023 season. And if you're an Aeroplan member, you can earn and redeem points for Rocky Mountaineer packages thanks to their exclusive partnership. Plus, if you have Aeroplan 50K status or a premium credit card, you can actually get a complimentary upgrade from Silver Leaf to Gold Leaf and an upgraded hotel room in Kamloops as well. Now, in this particular day, we were a little bit late arriving into Banff, and so they fed us another small meal of butter chicken, along with one last drink service to savor as we arrived at our destination. And for the final stretch of the journey, I of course headed back to my favorite spot, the outdoor vestibule.
Now, as we're pulling into beautiful Banff, it's time to reflect on what's been a very rewarding journey here with Rocky Mountaineer. This is my first time taking this type of luxury train trip, multiple days across a huge landscape, and I have to say, it's been really enjoyable. I think 2 days is just about the right length for this type of journey. We're getting to the phase now where it's like almost a bit too much time spent on the train, so I'm excited to get off and explore a bit of Alberta next. But overall, between the food and drink and the wonderful service, and of course, some of the beautiful scenic views along the way, I have to say I've had a lot of fun here on the Rocky Mountaineer on the first passage to the west, and I look forward to taking more trips on the train, whether it's with Rocky Mountaineer or all around the world as well. And I'll see you over in those videos.